in our midst His Royal Highness Dr. Alhaji Shaban Audu Ninzaza III Esu of Kwali and Chairman Kwali Council of Chiefs of the FCT Area Council in our midst. We also have the representative of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation in our midst, who is seated downstairs. Okay, we have the representative of the Minister of Women Affairs in our midst. Who is the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Women Affairs? His name is Antonia Akpabio Ekpa, representing the Minister of Women Affairs. Thank you. We have also in our midst here Professor Andy Ladan Dambanki. He's the chairman of Anti-Narcotics Emergency Rescue Mission, Abuja. We are expecting Mrs. Blessing Nyong Essien, the Managing Director of Paradise Estate, Abuja. Also in our midst is Mrs. Pauline Ndidi Ume. We also have in our midst the representative of Hajia Nasfat Ade Saidu. Hajia Hafsat Ade Saidu is the chairman, founder, Aisha Saidu Foundation, represented here today by Mohammed Ajago. We have some other guests downstairs, and I want to welcome everybody and crave your indulgence for us to run through this program. On that note, I want to hand over to the chairman. Thank you.
Oh, okay, I wanted to.
Okay.
Distinguished Senator, Royal Highness, we've had a very detailed introduction. Knowing that the time is fast spent, let me not attempt to do another introduction, but I respect all of you. When I came in today and I saw the caliber of people, I wanted to ask my brother, say, why did you ambush me? I wanted to decline the offer, but I want to thank all of you for allowing me to play this small role in honor of my brother, Alphonsus. And I want to thank all of you for supporting him in this noble cause. My brother Alan has been a renowned public servant. He served our country at home and abroad, the foreign ministry. And when I saw the title of his book, I asked myself, what are those experiences that he had abroad that so moved him to zero in on racism? But I also know that he only looked at that perspective, and I know there are other discriminations in society. Is it about women? Is it race? And so on. I've gone through his book. I'm not going to review it. That will be done by somebody else. But I also know that ignorance can lead to a lot of challenges, and even in our society. Sometimes we hurt ourselves because we don't have the right information. And he has also pointed out that ignorance is part of the reason why we discriminate against ourselves. There's no information. So I want to thank him for bringing information out. Maybe that will also contribute in our collective effort as minimizing discrimination in whatever form. I personally feel challenged, and I can assure you I will keep jotting down my small notes on other issues. You challenge me, and when I'm in trouble, I come to you and say, how did you do it? Your guidance will also help me. Having said that, I want to wish all of us a very successful outing, and may this book be a huge success and an impetus for you to do more. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that brief remark. We'll move fast, but before we go on, we want to recognize the presence of Dr. Mandus Akojom. He's an orthopedic surgeon.
Yes.
He works with the State House Clinic. You know, great men at times come in disguised form. This is somebody who can get us standing again if we break our legs. We'll go straight to the book review. Brief remark. First of all, brief remark by the president and founder of Pan-African Institute for Global Affairs, Dr. Sir Martin Omoibi.
Thank you very much, my brother Knight Cyprian, for those remarks. I will be a little briefer than the chairman, I should. Just to say a big thank you to all of you for honoring this invitation to be present at the formal launching of my brother's book, The Scars of Our Generation. I come in two capacities here. First, as a colleague and friend of his from 30 years of sojourn in the foreign ministry. We are now both pensioners, not pensioner, but pensioners. There's a difference between the two. And when he first told me that he was going to do a book, I told him, I said, that is the purpose for which my institute is founded. Because we have, of course, Africa or Black people, we have challenges. But But one of our problems really is that we do not document. We do not tell our stories. We leave our stories to others, for others to tell. And when you leave your stories for others to tell, what do they do to you? They bastardize those stories. So that is why the Pan-African Institute for Global Affairs and Strategy was founded to create a room for retired ambassadors to be able to come back and tell their story of their experience. So when he said he was going to do a book, I said, we will support you in whatever way we can. So I'm very proud and very happy that today has come to be and that my brother Alan has produced this incredibly good book. I won't go into the substance of the book, but just a few remarks. Racism is not just a scourge, it is evil. And its precursor, as this book also makes clear, is slavery. But today we have modern forms of slavery. Our children, because of our failed systems, are migrating thousands of miles across hazardous journeys, making hazardous journeys through the desert, drowning in the Mediterranean to go for greener pastures in Europe. Of course, are there greener pastures in Europe that are greener than in Africa and in Nigeria? Our institute also goes around with NYSC to talk to our young people during rotation camps on the hazards of irregular migration. But today, even though slavery has ended, there's what is now called modern day slavery, human traffickers, and all kinds of things. And we also have such contemporary expressions of racism in the form of xenophobia, in the form of discrimination, and sentiments that are really not relevant, but we use them to achieve whatever selfish interest that we want to pursue. And this is part of the challenges of nation building in our continent and as Black people. You've heard what happened to us in Accra, Nigerians in Accra, what happened recently to us also in South Africa, a country also that we liberated, how they turned against their fellow Blacks. And so I think this book is very relevant, and I thank you all for showing such a passion and commitment to be present here to honor this occasion. I hope that the lessons from here will be learned even in the application of our own domestic and nation-building challenges in Nigeria. Discrimination by whatever term it is described, whether it is racism, whether it's tribalism, whether it's xenophobia, whether in whatever form they manifest themselves, please let us jettison it. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, my senior brother. We want to get a snippet of the book, and that will be done by Sir Chukwuma Machukwume, SAN, former Attorney General Imo State, and the Principal Solicitor Chukwuma Machukwume, SAN, my SAN.
The Great Honorable Chairman, the distinguished Senator, the Senate Minority Leader, our own Dr. Manobe Omoibi, and the respected traditional ruler. I please stand on the existing protocol. My work is a little bit simple one. A review of the work we came here to present. The scars of the generation, of our generation, perspectives on racism by a wonderful gentleman, Alphonsus George Allen.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
First of all, for us to understand what this book is all about, there's need for us to have a perception, an understanding of who the author is. Summarily, Alphonsus George Allen is a very intelligent, quietly studying mind. He's not a boisterous human being. He's intelligent, always quiet, but study. Again, another thing with him is he's a globally traveled person. And while in these travels, he was serving his fatherland as an envoy. So these characters, plus others, enabled him to write this book. Now, scholars of our generation perspective on racism. If we are to understand this, there is need for us to know what each of the words in the title stand for. Take, for instance, the word scarce. That the presence of that clause, the scarce, is not by coincidence. One, you recall that the word scar implies the remnants of a depressing problem bequeathed to one's generation. It is also about an ongoing problem that is frightening a generation. So it comes from the past, and it is also present with us. Then the word our generation. The fact is that for us to look at this book, it's very important we don't look at generation as it is with us today. Because when the next person, when in a century's time, somebody picks the book and read, he will be looking at it as per the problem of that period. So invariably, our generation today is for today and is for the future people. And there's something we need to also bear in mind. Issue of racism is not an issue that is easily to go away. Not when our generation goes, the problem will go. It has been there from when you look at the book of Genesis, all the chapters in the Old Testament, the question of racism and racial superiority continues to be a recurring measure. So, we have to bear this book we are going to unveil today. Just like the animal farm, written many years ago, shapes the thought of the world today. We are likely to have it that in many years to come, this fine work, Skies of our generation, will be a guiding and a point of reference on the issue of racism. Now another one. Why is it that Alphonsus George Allen is able to write authoritatively on this? George Allen is a knight of Roman Catholic Church and knows in the Bible the role racism has played. I want to call your attention to the issue of, in the New Testament, why Christ highlighted the parable of the Good Samaritan. That is the problem racism is blocking us from knowing. This idea of cross-border classification is quite very wrong. Because in every 12, you must have a Judas. That is the story of the Good Samaritan. Now, having done all this small introduction, let me go on to say that the book has several preludes. But of particular interest is the foreword written by Ambassador Dr. Martin Omoribe, a brilliant retired Permanent Secretary of Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Another part of that prelude is prefaced by the author. As regards the foreword, I believe that the author's father must have told him what my father, Chief Basil Umebinyo, Lusike, one of Apollo, told me when I was in the primary school. It is better to be a slave to a philosopher than to be a master to a fool. The author worked under Dr. Omoibe. Yes. Oh, great. You know the spelling is. Yes. They worked together in the foreign affairs, and the author has remained eager to learn from him. We too are going to learn from the great mind. Take, for instance, what he said in the foreword. United States of America, the epicenter of world attention and perhaps the most diverse knowledge of races, has been at the forefront in an attempt to interrogate and the seemingly intractable problem of racism. To stem the tidal wave of race-induced social firement, America has taken such proactive measures as Emancipation Proclamation and the 30th Amendment, among other legal instruments. However, it would seem this violent onslaught on racism has been, by and large, unavailing as the fire of racism rages on. He goes on to conclude, a familiar feeling of books of this kind is their author's intention to be in denial by seeking a completely absorb the blacks all over the world of the blame for the historical racism that their forefathers suffered and the temporary racism which the descendants suffered. The author rises above this by being courageous enough to draw his readers' attention to the less talked about strains of racism perpetrated by the blacks against blacks and variously called triumphalism and xenophobia. As we go on in the chapters of the work, you see where the ambassador is referring to as the author also laid the blame on the blacks. We thank you, Ambassador. When cerebral minds rise, people find reading enjoyable. We are grateful. Now about the preface. The author gave a pointer to enrich intellectual work embedded in the book. These are his words. The author sojourned in Central Europe as a diplomat also exposed him to many libraries and historical measures. Please let's not lose advantage of that word. Such libraries. Which means, while he was there, libraries were his port of calls. So, he's writing this book. It's a matter of character. It's not a matter of coincidence. Now he said, there are many libraries and historical museums which enrich his knowledge of slavery and racism that occurred since 12th century. Which means issue of slavery have been with us for as long as the world had existed. The author continued. He said, it is authors which that the public policy planners Especially on education, we not discard the study of history in their curriculum development efforts so as not to create any gap in knowledge of Africa and the world in general. We are grateful to the author. Now we ask, why this removal of the study of history from our school curriculum? Having done this introduction, let me now go to the main work. The 90-page book is arranged in 8 chapters with postscripts and 2 appendices. In chapter 1, the author traces the origin of slavery. That's how he put it. The origin of slavery are not lost to human history. It is sometimes hypothesized that at some moment it was decided that persons detained for crime or as a result of warfare would be more useful if put into work in some way instead of being killed outright or discarded or eaten. However, it is not known if and when that first started. So it was a human being's genius approach of rather than killing people captured during the war or people caught committing crime against the public, instead of killing them, they were put into a different use, which is slavery. It goes on, slavery is known to have existed as early as Shang Dynasty, 18th to 12th century in China. For most of that period, slaves were generated in the same ways as they were elsewhere, including capture in war, slave raiding, and sale of insolvent debtors. In chapter 2, he went to give us a further brilliant analysis of the magnetism of the African and European relationship 400 years before the colonial time. He put it this way: to discuss trade between Africans and Europeans in the 4 centuries before colonial rule is to discuss slave trade. For 4 centuries, 400 years before colonial period started, what was regulating the relationship between Africans and Europe was slave trade. So you can imagine in these 400 years how many were loaded out of Africa into Europe as slaves. Before that, he was first a free man and then a captive. Chapter 3 of the book has important insightful information on slavery. The role of slavery, let me pick the words of the author. The role of slavery in promoting racist prejudice and ideology has been carefully studied in certain situations, especially in USA. The simple fact that no people can enslave another for centuries. The simple fact that no people can enslave another for centuries without coming out with the notion of superiority. And when the color and other physical traits of these people are quite different, it was inevitable that the prejudice would take a racist form. So this is how the justification of the slavery, how it be. If you enslave somebody for years, it means you have to promote something to show why you are superior and why that order will continue. The author went on to say again, within Africa itself, the same can be said of the situation in Cape Province of South Africa, where white men were establishing military and social superiority over non-whites ever since 1650. This is another way of a deliberate conscious justification because you must justify why you have to make your fellow human being below and inferior to you. The author went on to outline the contradictions of different values extended to the whites and the opposite of same method to the blacks. Again, I quote his words. There was always a contradiction between the elaboration of democratic values inside Europe and the elaboration of authoritarian and racist practices by Europeans with respect to Africans. When the French Revolution was made in the name of liberty, equality, and fraternity, it did not extend to the black Africans who were enslaved by the France in the West Indies and Indian Ocean. Indeed, France fought against the effort of these people to emancipate themselves. A different code for the Africans, and liberty, equality, and fraternity for the whites. The author continued. Racial prejudice reached its peak in the United States of America during the period when the first matter in the American National War of Liberation against the British colonies in the 18th century was an African descendant, Cyprus Atticus. And both enslaved and free Africans played a key role in Washington's army. And yet, the American Constitution, with its famous preamble that all men are created equal, sanctioned upon the existence of that Constitution that said all men are created equal, upon the role they played in ensuring that American independence is secured for the British. Yet that Constitution sanctioned the continued enslavement of Africans and American Indians. Unfortunately, the author never mentioned the said conquering of the Hausa Kingdom in 1804 or to 1808 during the Fulani invasion. The author must have forgotten to remember that what the Hausas are necessarily going through in the midst of the constitutional provision of majority rule is a manifestation of racial discrimination in their fatherland. The author may have forgotten to inform us that unless this constitutional anomaly is corrected, the rest of Nigeria will be a stranger and tenants in their fatherland. In chapter 4 to 6, unlike the book of Jeremiah in the Bible, the lamentation of the Old Testament, the author in those chapters bemoans the different phases of racism and the ugly effects of the psychic and optimal development of individuals and nations. Glimpses of hope. In a brave manner, the author in chapter 7, titled Challenge and the Way Forward, gave a narration, a very long narration, starting with the Ward Frederick, a runaway slave who took a pencil in his hand and wrote, "My bondage and my freedom." He narrated a lot of them. He goes on in that chapter 6 and reached to Michael Jordan in page 7, the basketball star, the Tiger Wood, and all that. But in my own case, something struck my mind when I was reading all this. When I see all he narrated, I was forced to take a look at the year the book was published. And I saw that it was published in 2019. I'm sure if this book, The Scars of Our Generation Perspective on Racism, was published in the later months of 2020, the brilliant author would have added a new phenomenon in the US presidential election, which the US presidential election drew up in the US polity. The untying of the votes of the blacks and the colored. Hitherto, their votes were massively taken away individually in millions, but in such a manner that each disfranchised individual innocently felt it was a mere omission. It was a constructive, or in the words of Chief Obafemi Awolowo, the great sage and my idol, subtle omission. When the Democrats felt that the lack of these friendly votes would undermine their victory, they had no option than to block those lapses. To some politicians, ensuring that every black and the colored, the right to vote could mean rigging, because such has not been the case. In pages 39 to 46 is chapter 8, which turns out to be the conclusion. And the author, among other things, reminded us about the work of James Meredith, a black civil rights veteran who was shot while on 220-mile one-man march from Memphis to Jackson, tagged March Against Fear. Nigerians must march against fear. I sincerely think that the willpower of the Lagos State, particularly the House of Assembly who enacted their financial crime, cannot be fought. The financial crime cannot be fought from one-sided federal commission. States can fight crime. In page 44, he subtly told us the discrimination is also in the midst of people of the same race. And that's what the ambassador referred in the foreword as also highlighting the lapses among the people of the same race. An example is what is known the Osu caste system in Igbo land, and concluded in page 46. The Osu system is one practice Igbo communities must do away with in order to experience true modernity, enlightenment, and civilization in the 21st century. In the postscripts, the author idealized the victory of Senator Barack Hussein Obama. In fact, a whole lot of pages 47 to 51 were devoted to the said victory. All I can say is that, bearing in mind that when a child is born, all of us are always happy. But we need to be more careful, because when Adolf Hitler was born, we also were happy. The world was happy. The public around him was happy. But what Hitler turned out to be is a different story. The gas chamber. Hussein Obama's victory at the White House was gladdening, but was his presidency a good omen to the Nigerian polity? On the two appendices, I take special interest on the second appendix. What did the black man do to deserve this suffering? Without wasting your time, I must say that this last appendix seemed to have made a lie of what the author proclaimed in his preface. The choice of the title of this book was born out of the author's conscious belief in the equality of all human beings, irrespective of color of their skin. If that is the case, why did plaintiff cry? Why did the black man deserve this suffering? Israelites were slaves to the Egyptian pharaohs. Today, are they still slaves? Why are black leaders and nations still remain robots in the hands of their erstwhile slave masters? Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, my SA, the Great Seal. Before we go on, I have to recognize the presence of the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Women Affairs, Ambassador Antonia Eba. She's physically in this premises, but she has preferred to sit at the floor below. Having his staff already seated here, she humbly did not want to displace him. We also have here Mrs. Blessing. So we'll have to go quickly to the next item on the program because we are racing against time. Seriously racing against time. We have to move straight, and I have the honor to invite the distinguished Senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, former Deputy Governor of Abia State, the Magandigo, the Alasala of Nigeria. Alasala. Right Honorable Chief Senator Enina Baribe to come and unveil the book.
Where is the book that
We are not going.
It's down there.
No, here.
Oh, okay. I think you better bring a copy here.
Yeah, you can sit. Let us bring copies, please.
Oh, can they get the?
Yes.
Yeah, once you do the unveiling, the book, the copies will flood this
Will your
space.
Okay.
camera?
Okay, so
Yes.
we're bringing it here.
Okay.
Bring it here.
Thank you, sir. Imobala. Level.
Thank you.
Level.
While they're bringing the book, let me just clear some there. Ambassador, I'm sure you will want to know what this man means by Alasala. A lot of people say Alasala, they really don't know. Alasala in Igbo actually means the ground is now very fertile.
Yes.
Thank you. Ow. Okay, let's leave it there. Just leave it. I think we can now just. And to continue the explanation, I was given a title by the late Oba of Lagos. And the title actually is Alashela of Lagos, which he told me meant somebody who overcomes. Then we left the venue and went to where we were celebrating the chieftaincy title, and the band that came to play, coming from the east, found it very difficult to be calling Alashela. So it was very easy to say Alasala.
So we adopted.
And then everybody now adopted it, and so they converted Alashela into Alasala. So I'm Alasala actually from the Inca of Lagos. It's now time for the unveiling. Let me also thank everybody that has been patiently waiting since 10 o'clock for this book unveiling. I would like to answer some of the questions that the book reviewer posed, starting from the back, where he asked the question, why would those who are our leaders today, still hanging on to the apron strings of their erstwhile, I think that question can easily be answered. When I was having a discussion, I think we looked at it with Ambassador, and we said that our leadership recruitment model is very flawed, and that has led us to recruit leaders that do not know their history and do not even have their own, let's say, confidence in themselves. And so at every point, they have to fall back to those who were, who had colonized them, who had made sure that they did not come out of the place where they are. It's very glad to read something about a book on racism. Once you expand the frontiers of racism, you come down to what the author talked about, which is tribalism, ethnic, what do we call it now? Ethnicism. And of course, the very, very dangerous one that is going on in Nigeria today, which is ethnic triumphalism, where some people feel that because they belong to a subgroup, then nothing can happen to them. And they can break the law, they can go against the law, and they can go ahead and do anything against the interests of the rest of Nigeria and get away with it. So it is that this book helps us to be, because at the point at which we look at books, it helps us also to be able to have a bigger perspective of everything that we go through today. I want to also commend the author. I have written a book and I know what it takes to write a book. And I will also enjoin everybody that comes in contact with this book to actually read it. I think I want to get the name, I can't come to me offhand, says that if you want to hide something from the black man, put it in a book because he will never read it. You know? So I want all of us to read this book because those are the things that really lead us to emancipation, both of our minds and of our people. So I would like to use this opportunity to invite the chairman, ambassador, our traditional ruler. We want you to sit where you are because we respect traditional rulers. We don't want them to get up and be walking around like ordinary people. We will do the job for you, sir. And Pamsek, please, and ambassador, if you can all stretch your hands, and we will now take it. Let's see, can we take? Oh, good. We will all just put our hands down this way. Madam Ume, I don't think we should be very far away. Madam Pamsek, please. Let us see some gender sensitivity. It's just for us to put our hands on the, and then we'll be able to, okay. And then what do we use now? We use, his name is Alan. So we will spell your name, and at the last part of your name, we will unveil the book. So give me an A. A. Give me an L. L. Give me another A. A. Give me an N. N. And then give me a G. G. So I guess we should all take a copy. And these are the book. This is the book. The scars of our generation, perspectives on racism. Thank you very much. My very good friend, Ambassador Lang, usually this is the point at which the chief launcher now starts to make this. But being somebody in government and somebody that they are looking at to see where we make a mistake. I will make that mistake. But I will actually launch your book and it will not be less than 6 figures.
God bless. MC?
Yeah, thank you. Can we take our seats while we do the real thing? The real thing now is to thank you, the distinguished senator.
I need 10 copies.
The distinguished senator has taken 10 copies. We will invite the chief launcher to, in the person of Mrs. Blessing, to announce. If you have something to say, you say what you want to say, then you tell us how many copies of the book you are picking and the figure that will go behind the book.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very delighted to be here. It's an opportunity. My mind is well opened and I have more information on happenings. For today, I would like to launch this book with 200,000. Thank you.
We have the representative of the permanent secretary. Now, maybe he has something to tell us.
Good afternoon. Once again, my name is Elijah Idris Mohammed. I'm a director in the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs, the E for Shipa Excellent. When they appear here as a man, within me, I have more of women in me. I'm just a foot soldier. My permanent secretary was officially assigned to represent the cabinet. The Honorable Minister was officially invited. The Honorable Minister, Her Excellency, Talent, OFR, KSG. Well, this is not the moment of talkism. Details have been read out within the context of the book, and good enough, the ambassador said it in practical terms. It's not a theoretical aspect for whatever he must have read with his practical experience of what transpired while he was serving. He has brought everything to bear and has driven the points back home where we know that similar of what he has said are really happening in reality as we have. And that has posed a very big challenge to us, which happens to be a crisis-prone kind of system we find ourselves. By special grace of God, we'll get over it. That is our prayer. Without saying so much, I am a civil servant, and for whatever I do, I'm always directed. And it is often said that the crime of a messenger is in the message, and I wouldn't want to commit one. On behalf of the Honorable Minister, Federal Minister of Women Affairs, Her Excellency Temple Talent, with directly from my permanent secretary, Ambassador Antonia Akpabio Ekpa, PhD. I want to announce the support by Her Excellency, the Honorable Minister of Women Affairs, of 100,000 naira to support the book. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to invite the representative of Hajia Aisha Mohammed. Okay, Hajia Nasfat Ade Saidu.
Good afternoon. The chairman, the book launcher, is here. Please, I'd like to correct the name. It's Hajia Nafisat and Saidu, not Hafsat. I'm by name Rotarian Ajaguman, member Rotary A Club of 1 District 925 Nigeria. I stand here to represent the chairman of Aishat Saidu Foundation. She is launching the book with undisclosed amount here with me, and promise to get back to the author when she is in town. Thank you.
Thank you. As we continue, I want to recognize the presence of Sir Louis Ajero. Sir Louis Ajero is a brother knight. He is seated right downstairs. We have to move on. Maybe the chairman wants to say something to me. Okay, the chairman wants to do his own.
Our distinguished son, am I a retiree or retired? I don't know. There are two words that were used. One better.
Choose the one you like.
So I don't know whether I'm a retiree or retired. So a modest launching, but I'm with you all the way. A launch for 50,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Some of us get confused when we hear of a general. We are looking for one big person, and we get more confused when we hear that the general in our midst retired 9 years ago, and he's still looking like this. So, General, you are blessed. I don't want to go in any particular order, but let me start from my right side. All the guests here seated, anyone who has anything to launch the book is free to. I will start with my brother to my right.
MC, I think you have also tried to throw me under the bus, but I was waiting for Ambassador Martin from Oibi to make the pronouncement because we come from the same constituency. And if you don't mind, I would have to take a pass. I want to listen. We all served under the same cabinet of Chief Tommy Kimi when we were younger officers. I share a lot with the writer, having also worked. Yes. So I'll take a pass, and then I want Ambassador maybe to be around. Then for the book reviewer, Ome, we were in the same school, in the same class for 5 years, and we did in the same dormitory. So we've come a long way.
We don't talk.
Oh,
Excellency, I said in civil service, just like in the military, they say you take dressing. I wasn't going to make any pronouncement without my senior colleague and Ambassador Homali is here. And we've come a long way, serving in the same cabinet under Chief Tommy Kinney. And so he knows. And I said, if I make anything that is contrary to what he says, I will get a query, even return. Excellency. What would you want me to say? No, you're asking. What do you want me to say?
I was begging him to launch the book for us.
Oh, okay. My dear brother and colleague, your diplomatic immunity has been restored to you for this purpose. So you are under no sanctions. You cannot be declared persona non grata. So please go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Since I've been assured of my immunity, like I said, I've known him for a long time. He happened to be heading the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we worked with him together. And we made the reviewer. We were in the same class in St. Augustine somewhere. And of course, the writer, we also come from the same environment. I'm going to learn this book. I'm retired as an ambassador. I'm retired. With some figures, with a lot of zeros behind it. Again, a civil servant. Where is the senator? When you hear that a retired ambassador is making pronouncements with a lot of things, somebody say, how much did he steal? I didn't steal anything. So I'm going to lodge with an undisclosed amount, but enough to cover the cost of the book.
Thank you. I am learning a lot from the School of Diplomacy today. I have my brother night right after the representative of the Minister of Women Affairs in the person of Sir Thomas Foundation. Sir Thomas Foundation, any message for your brother?
The chairman of this occasion, let me stand on the existing protocol. I thank God that I witnessed the launching of this book. Incidentally, the author is my brother. And we say blood is thicker than water. We were initiated the same day, and so we remain two-man squad in our commander. And we have been doing things together all along, because blood is thicker than water. Even in our commandery, it's difficult to separate us. So I'm not surprised that I'm here today to witness this heroic occasion. I'm not a diplomat. The only thing I learned in the commandery is that for the past 13 years, I've been serving in the finance desk. Incidentally, I'm the financial secretary of the commandery. And most of the time, as a financial secretary, they bring all the money to me. So all the money they are contributing here today, they will bring all the money to me. I'm the one to keep the records. So the only thing I will add is that my name will be on that list with my own token, which will also be in the number of people to borrow from the senator. Mine will be, his is 6 figures. Mine is going to be 5 figures. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will get messages from the people I have downstairs. And unless if there is anybody who has anything to do here. Oh, okay. I was afraid to approach His Royal Highness. It's better that he is the one inviting me. His Royal Highness, sir.
Chairman of the King and all other protocols being observed. First of all, I feel very happy that I have been invited by my good friend, Professor Kambaki, to this occasion. And when I came, I met so 3 or 4 good Nigerians who are hearing about, but I never saw them, especially Senator Abaribi. I watch his presentations and so on and so forth. And I read about him on papers and so on. But today, I was so delighted when I met him. And I feel glad. If I can be very foolish, I really don't know the author. What is the author? Oh, I was sitting down with you. Very good. You see, when I saw racism, I remember in 1971, when I was in Government College, KP, they sent teachers, all kinds of teachers from South Africa. And my English teacher happened to be a black South African, and he was told to speak about racism, which they referred to it at that time, apartheid. And apartheid actually is a system where it was development apart. Blacks were developed on their own, the white developed on their own, and he told us so many things about apartheid. And since then, I developed interest in history. I was a science student, but because of what he told us, I had to read history. And of course, I wrote very well. In fact, my credits in history was better than the one I got from the sciences. And I went on to struggle when we were told that history has been removed from our syllabus. But I want to mention here that history has been restored in our syllabus. We have chairman or president of the Nigerian History Society, who is a professor at the University of Makadi. If you want to know more, I have his number, you can ask. And I was so happy that this has been restored. Again, you see, racism is everywhere. Those of you who are Christians, I remember when Jesus came, so he said he was sent only to the lost what is it? Lost sheep of Israel, which means all other people who are not Israelites. You see, so it has been there and it's on. Those of us who are not Hausas, I have to be very serious, and I want you to understand. The Hausa man sees all other Muslims as if they were drafted into Islam. And in Hausa, they say to baby, that is, you have been removed. You know, your clothes have been removed out of the paganism, and now you are a Muslim. That is one of the things that is dragging Islam backward. I know very personally. Some of my parents are Christians. We live together. But when we go to pray, they'll call you to baby, and they don't think you are a Muslim. This is also a sort of, what is it? Racism. And it goes on like that. There are some other tribes who will deliberate you, they'll make your tribal name a very terrible thing. They'll say, after all, we are one person. which means the Gwari man is not knowledgeable, it's not intelligent, he doesn't know anything. It's happening in the north. And it's really very painful. I do not see where a Hausa man can really compete with it. Especially when I went to a very good school, a very college, where we have people like former head of state, so on and so forth. So these are the things that are terrible in Nigerian society. And I hope we will be able to get out of it. Because this is drawing Nigerians backwards too much. And I sit down with somebody who says he's a Hausa man, and he doesn't consider me as a human being. How do I trust him? So this is a national issue. Racism is ramification is new form, the new racism is even more dangerous than the old racism, where people, were given names that suffered. But here we're going through psychological turmoil. And I think it's worse than the physical turmoil we saw. People like Nelson Mandela, Steve Biko, and so on. You see, so we in Nigeria, we must find a way of dealing with racism because it is even going into our religion. It's a very serious issue, and I thank the author for having decided to write this wonderful book. And I hope I decided to take one. I don't want to take more than that because I'll find time myself to really use this book to attack those of us who think other tribes are not important in Nigeria. I'm going to use just one book because I will not allow you to see the book, but I will use the book to attack. We meet in the mosque. To me, for example, let me be very frank to you. On Fridays, I'm the owner of Kwali. I'm the chairman of traditional rulers in Kwali. I'm a Muslim. We don't have many Muslims in my language, in my tribe, especially in Kwali. But do you know that on Fridays, when I go to the mosque, I get attacked every time. And what they say is that, how can a Gwari man be a Muslim and also carry so many people along with him to the mosque? So people who listen to radio and so on have always been on attack. And we didn't just come from the blue sky. We were made there in Kwali, just like any other person is made in his own hometown.
Yes.
And people will come from other parts of Nigeria and say, especially from the north, how can a Kwali man be a Muslim? How can he be a leader? Because thank God that we're able to go to school, out to the university, even to the PhD level, we would have been in terrible, situations. And probably the peace of this country, of this Abuja, would have been first disturbed from Kwali. So actually, I am moved by this job, and I say I'm going to use it as an instrument. I wouldn't bother if I'm arrested by the SSF. I've been arrested several times by the SSF, but I came out wonderful because we were being given the act of speaking and presenting our issues in the way that people really understand. So I want to thank the author for doing a very wonderful job. What really I want to say again is that this word racism is giving hypocritical outlook to Nigerians. Many things happen on the line of racism. No Nigerians ready to talk about it. We're not ready. And if we want to hide under the fear that probably somebody is going to attack us, Nigeria will do. We will not go where we're supposed to go. We must be able to speak the truth about what is happening, even among us who think we're having the same religion. I was counting churches in Kwali, and I've got over 113 churches. Yes. Mountain on the Fire, It is fire on the mountain. Every CEO so fire on the mountain. You know that and that and that. And I was asking, did Jesus Christ actually brought all this? All racism. I hope we should be able to bring this number of churches to at least 4. Because I know personally